It's a bad day for fans of genocide, as the International Court of Justice has ruled against Israel and in support of South Africa's case that Israel must take steps to prevent a genocide in Gaza. So in this video, I will break this down. I will also help you understand why things are worded in the way that they are, because you may question, but there is a genocide going on. Why must they take steps to prevent one that is already happening? I'll help explain all of that, including why there was no ceasefire called, as the way that this is being framed by some is incredible. So let me actually start with that. This is from the National Post here. This is a Canadian paper, and their headline is just incredible. Top UN court rejects South Africa's request to halt war against Hamas. So based on the headline here, you would come away thinking, oh, I guess Israel won their case. Yet, if you look at the actual ruling, this is the ICJ's ruling against Israel and in favor of South Africa. 15-2, 15-2, 16-1, 16-1, 15-2, 15-2. All stating that Israel must take steps to prevent a genocide in Gaza. This one, state of Israel shall ensure the military not commit any acts of genocide. Israel shall take all measures to punish all public solicitations to genocide. Israel shall take immediate and effective measures to address adverse conditions to life in the Gaza Strip. Israel shall take effective measures to prevent evidence of actions impacting the Genocide Convention. Israel shall submit to the court a report, all measures taken to follow the orders of this court within 1 month. These are, this was clearly a ruling against Israel. And it isn't just the National Post that fell into this. I'll get to that in a second. But Owen Jones here writing, Israel apologists are pretending that the ICJ had the power to declare Israel's massacre of Gaza a genocide, but refrained from doing so. That isn't true. The ICJ had no power to adjudicate that at this stage. The most they can do was conclude whether genocide is plausible. So in case you're wondering about the wording, why it's talking about measure to prevent genocide when there was one going on, it's because this court did not have the legal ability to say that there is a genocide happening. So they are simply laying out, hey, these steps must be taken to prevent genocide, which also, I'll get to later, gets to, it opens the door for Israel's allies, like the UK, like the US, like Canada, to then use this as the basis for them to take steps to stop their support of Israel with this bombardment of Gaza. So this allows Israel's allies to not have to come to the defense of Israel, because let's say for a second that the court ruled that a genocide is happening. That immediately now implicates the US, the UK, Canada, and other Israel allies in that genocide. But by saying we want you to prevent a genocide, this opens up the door for the US, the UK, Canada to not be defensive and instead work in support of trying to end the genocide. So work in support of this ruling to try and end it, as opposed to being on the defensive and trying to claim that they're not committing a genocide. So, it's a little complicated, but it helps you to understand why they're not just outright saying that there is a genocide going on. New York Times, this was their initial headline. Adam Johnson sharing the screenshot. UN court declines to demand Israel stop its military campaign. Again, this is not, they actually went on to change it because they realized how stupid that was. UN court demands Israel prevent genocide but doesn't call for a ceasefire. So back on this point about ceasefire. This is very important to note here. Hamas is not a part of the UN. So the court cannot, from the court's perspective, they cannot tell Israel to cease all military operations, because that would imply that Hamas has to as well. Yet they have no jurisdiction over Hamas. So they cannot tell Israel to stop their bombardment when there is another member of this conflict that is not part of the UN. So this is why there is no call for a ceasefire, because they cannot legally call for a ceasefire when one member of that ceasefire is not part of the court, is not part of the UN. So this whole idea of, oh, Israel won out because a ceasefire wasn't called. They can't call one. This is a legal proceeding. They legally cannot call one because another member of that would-be ceasefire is not a part of the UN. Also, as Ali Abunma writes here, this is a legal ruling. Saying the word ceasefire wouldn't have magically translated into a ceasefire. This legal ruling contains significant findings about Israel as a perpetrator of genocide. To the extent international law and justice has any utility, this is a landmark case. So it's important to note, this is a success for human rights, a success for South Africa's case. This is a ruling against Israel. There is no ability for the court to call for a ceasefire when one member of that ceasefire is not a part of the UN. Now, this is just to show you a real headline, because it wasn't, this is not, thankfully, the norm. I'm seeing headlines and news stories that actually properly describe the issue or the ruling. But here from The Guardian, UN court orders Israel to ensure acts of genocide are not committed in Gaza. So this is what a proper outlet writes. Now, I want to show you a bit of the video of the ruling.
In the court's view, at least some of the acts and omissions alleged by South Africa to have been committed by Israel in Gaza appear to be capable of falling within the provisions of the Convention. In light of the following, the court concludes that, prima facie, it has jurisdiction pursuant to Article 9 of the Convention to entertain the case. Given this conclusion, the court considers that it cannot accede to Israel's request that the case be removed from the general list. The court notes that the military operation being conducted by Israel following the attack of 7 October 2023 has resulted in a large number of deaths and injuries, as well as massive destruction of homes, the forcible displacement of the vast majority of the population, and extensive damage to civilian infrastructure. While figures relating to the Gaza Strip cannot be independently verified, recent information indicates that 25,700 Palestinians have been killed, over 63,000 injuries have been reported, over 360 housing units have been destroyed or partially damaged, and approximately 1.7 million persons have been internally displaced.
All right, so I'm going to get to what this could mean, because that's kind of what's next here. But imagine watching that decision and then going to write a headline for a national newspaper claiming that Israel won their case. It is so incredibly dishonest, and you wonder why people have questions about, believing the media. It's, let's be clear here, a lot of conservative media, but also media that is traditionally or viewed as being left or left-leaning, like the New York Times, also writing conservative headlines claiming that Israel won their case when clearly they did not. I mean, they straight up said there that they rejected Israel's request that the case be removed, meaning there was merit to the case, meaning all these rulings against Israel. And also worth, I'll get to that, worth pointing out here, the court's decisions are binding and cannot be appealed, but it has no way of enforcing them. Israel earlier indicated it would not accept the ICJ's orders, but we will get to potentially what it could still mean. The court's panel ordinarily comprises 15 judges, but was expanded in this case by additional judges from South Africa and Israel. Israel's judge, Aaron Barak, an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor and former president of the country's Supreme Court, voted in favor of 2 of the emergency measures, ordering Israel to curb incitements to genocide and to ensure aid can enter the enclave. When even your own judge, at least in 2 cases, rules against you, kind of says something. Now, this is what this, as I was saying earlier, what this could mean, what this ruling, the impact it could have. So Heidi Matthews, who is a law professor, writing here, I think we can infer from this that at a minimum, there is a serious risk that Israel will commit genocide. This is important because it puts all states on formal notice of the serious risk of genocide, which triggers states' duty to take concrete steps to prevent genocide. Going again, why this was discussed in the terms of, we want them to prevent genocide when there is one already going on, is this opens up the door for Israel's allies to take steps here. Going on to write, among other things, this means that in order for states to fulfill their international obligations under the Genocide Convention, they must do something. For example, states exporting arms or military technology to Israel must stop. The short story, this order on provisional measures will have an important and immediate impact on how states are required to act under international law. It will also radically shift the global conversation about what is happening in Gaza. So I'm still